Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to just take a quick moment to call your attention to the briefing book. When you review the briefing book, you'll see that this retreat was designed so that each section builds upon the next. So we hope that you'll join us for the entirety of the retreat to gain its full value. The data and policy discussions that will be presented over the next 2 days will become increasingly relevant to the many hundreds of neighborhoods in our region. Moving us from understanding national and state demographic trends and how they present in our region to examining tools that can be used to assess the vitality of counties. Tomorrow morning, we will be presented with tools that can help us better understand on a block-by-block basis social and economic mobility at the neighborhood level. Bridging the divide also involves building connections between our communities to gain a mutual understanding of the life experiences of all people in this region. This retreat will demonstrate that people must become the keystone in our policy analysis and decision making. With that said, to set the stage, we have invited Dr. Jim Johnson from the University of North Carolina, Center for Urban Strategies, and distinguished professor in the the University of North Carolina's Keenan-Flagler Business School, to present his research on national state disruptive trends. Regrettably, Dr. Johnson, who I've had the pleasure of working with before, is unable to make today's presentation. He's experienced a very concerning health issue over the past week that's required immediate medical attention and sends his regrets. But we are deeply grateful to him for recommending Dr. Parnell, his longtime colleague and co-author on this research, to take his place. Dr. Parnell has graciously fit us into his very busy schedule. In fact, he's flying out right after this to go to Harvard and make a similar presentation. And with that, I'd like to introduce him. He is a senior fellow at the Keenan Institute at the University of North Carolina and vice president of the Cedar Grove Institute for Sustainable Communities. Prior to his current positions, Dr. Parnell was a visiting research associate at the East-West Population Institute in Honolulu, a research associate for the Committee on Population at the Academy of Sciences, and a member of the sociology faculty at Duke University. He's been a principal investigator on grants from the National Institute on Aging and National Institute on Child Health and Development. And for the last decade, Dr. Parnell has served as an expert witness in civil rights and fair housing cases across the country, including the 2015 Supreme Court decision upholding the use of disparate impact evidence in fair housing litigation. So please join me now in welcoming Dr. Parnell, and thank you so much for being here, to present these trends and opportunities for us all to build more inclusive and equitable public policy.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being back in Pennsylvania. I spent 2 years in the late 70s at Penn State learning how not to go to graduate school and learning about winter. I too applaud you for addressing both rural and urban issues together as Chancellor Gallagher and Chancellor Nordstad. I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, now a growing city, spent time in Honolulu and Washington, but my parents came off farms in eastern North Carolina. My wife and I live on 50 acres, about 30 miles north of Chapel Hill, and I've been paying a lot of attention to rural issues. There's a great website for you rural people called the Daily Yonder, a really, really good policy website on rural issues. Demography is not destiny, but it sets a lot of parameters. I should note too that feel free to get coffee. Demographers like numbers. We've been described as CPAs without a personality, so just go for it if you need a cup of coffee. I'm going to talk some about your regional and state demographic trends and national trends, the challenges and the opportunities they present, and talk about inclusive and equitable development as a key to maintaining our competitiveness, and also about the challenges and opportunities in an aging population. I'm going to talk, I cut down, Samantha was a little worried about the length of my presentation, so I cut down some of the disruptive trends, But I want to focus on the regional trends and the movement of population. Some of the demographic trends in southwest Pennsylvania. The browning of America, that is the growth of the non-white population, in particular the growth of the Latino and Asian and African American populations. And the silver tsunami's hitting. I can speak with more authority on aging now. I turned 65 3 weeks ago, so I'm now an expert. And a brief touch on, it's framed as the end of men, but it's really the advancement of women in our society and leadership positions, as the audience here really informs us. The South has been growing. For the first part of this century, it was in significant decline. You can look at the absolute share of the American population. But beginning in the 70s and continuing, much of the growth of the United States has taken place in the South. Migration flows are to the South, out of the Northeast, the Midwest, even the West. The Northeast, Pennsylvania, continues to lose migrants to the South and other areas. The share of the growth, 2010 to 17, was over half of the growth, absolute growth in the country was in the South. In the Northeast, 6.3%. These are long-standing trends. And the growth has occurred among every group. White, black, Asian, Hispanic, elderly, native-born, foreign-born. In the Northeast, it's the opposite. Every group has declined. And I pulled some numbers just on Pennsylvania, this region, your southwest Pennsylvania region. And I'm going to start, this is the only equation I'm doing, and it's really quite simple, I promise. So population change is really easy. It's the difference between births and deaths and inflows and outflows. This is the demographic components. The Census Bureau estimates these annually now. From 2010, I've got a second slide with the other counties, to 2018. Natural change is the difference between deaths and births. And it doesn't look good in the region. And neither does net migration. Part of this, you have a complex region. Allegheny County, it's the history. It's the history of the region. The peak population in Allegheny County was in the 1960. 70 to 80, you lost almost 10% of your population. 80 to 90, you lost another 8% of your population. It's not people of every age who leaves. Who you lose are the young adults. And when the young adults left, you become disproportionately older. There are those of childbearing age, so you have fewer children. So you have these long-term effects. You all know, I know, Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and some of the surrounding counties have turned it around as the economy's transformed to to tech and medical research economy. And so if we'll look a little further, but some of the numbers are better than they look. But you live in an old region. Here are the other counties. Rural areas, small towns are still losing. We'll touch on this some more. And your small towns and rural areas are losing young adults. Between 2010 and 15, 2/3 of the counties in the country lost population, mainly young adults. The recession hit small towns and rural areas very hard. And you can see this demographically. Let's break down migration. The census breaks it down by net migration from international areas and domestic. Pennsylvania, the region, and most but not all of the counties have a net loss of domestic migrants. Many old people move in to be with family, move into warmer places. A couple of your counties, Washington, Butler, was it Butler? Have a net increase. Allegheny County, the net loss in migrants has been offset by international migration to the county. Other counties have not been able to offset. So this is, this presents a certain amount of challenges. as you can understand, and we'll talk about some more. One of the big disruptive trends, and certainly in the politics today, is this immigration-driven change in our country with the growing Latino and Asian populations. We hear more about the Latino, but there's a growth from numerous places. Here's the trend in immigration. One thing I learned in Pennsylvania when I was at Penn State, and I have a good friend at Bucknell I still work with a lot, is that Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania were really immigrant-driven in the late 19th, early 20th centuries. And so your history is a little different, but here's the country as a whole. And we see, beginning in the 80s, this large growth of the immigrant population across the country. And we can see also, this is the United States as a whole, both the absolute change between the last two censuses. We see the white population grew by 1.2%. The Latino population grew by 43%. The Asian population grew by 43%. The African American population grew by only 11%. More recently, the 2010 to 2017, it's pretty much the same pattern, with the Asian actually having a higher rate of growth, with the white population barely changing at all in the absolute numbers between 2010 and 2017. Here's the relative distribution of births, 90, 2008, 2011. And for the first time, white births, by white I mean white non-Hispanic, this kind of geeky demographic thing, but less than half the births. In North Carolina, 3 years ago, for the first time, a majority of public school kids were non-white. This presents some challenges. I'll talk about some more as we go, and gaining support. The percent of births that are Hispanic have grown from 15% to 26%. Here's the relative distribution in 2005 and the projected distribution. You know, we're going to be off a little, but that's more or less where we are. Whites will not be in the majority. Latinos, Hispanics will account for almost 30% of the population in the country. Asians, almost 10%. The percentage for blacks or African Americans will be about the same. Here's Southwest Pennsylvania. As a region as a whole, 86% white, 8% black, a much smaller Hispanic. If you see your Hispanic population growing, your economy is growing. It's an indicator. You know, those people move to opportunity. That's where they're going, where they can find jobs. Here's the change, 2010 to 2018. The white population in your region dropped by 3.7%. Hispanic populations, though small, grew by 40%. Asian population grew by 43%. Still not that big, but we have a large percentage growth. Black population basically flat. I pulled a few counties. I'm not going to go through each one of these. Samantha was quite worried that I would. Allegheny, 78%, significant black population, significant Asian, and relatively small Latino population. Here's your change. Same kind of pattern we saw before. Asian and Latinos growing, whites and blacks not. Armstrong County, 97% white. Penn State, I must tell you, is the whitest place I ever lived in my life. You know, it kind of freaked me out. In the South, you grow up, Center County's not that complicated. And Armstrong County doesn't look that complicated either. I don't know well. Beaver County, you know, it's the same story. White population is declining. This is one of the big reasons you're seeing these. It's not just the composition. Here's the key factor in the composition is the age difference. This is for the country as a whole, but I'll get to the specifics. White people are older. The median age of white women is 42 years old in 2017. Median age of black women, not quite 36. Median age of Hispanic women, not quite 30. That's a huge difference. That's why there's so many more Latino births. There are more women of childbearing age. Within Allegheny County, the median age of white women, 46.6. That's old. That's old. Not having a lot of births, white women. And you see the median age of Asian women, just over 30. Median age of Latino women, 28. So you're going to have more births among Asian and Latino women just because of the age structure. It's also why the white population is declining, significantly older. Washington County, same story. The white population's old. Asian, Hispanic population isn't. These are just women here. So this is all tied into the graying or the aging of our population and your region. Key drivers are the changes in longevity or life expectancy, declining fertility, and the aging of the boomers. I know everyone's sick of hearing about the boomers, but demographically, they're here to stay for another 25 years or so. Life expectancy has gone up steadily. And there's a lot of optimism. A guy named Jim Volpell, who used to be at Duke and now is at Max Planck in Rostock in Germany, was an extreme optimist. And he thought life expectancy was going to continue, and it may. We see it's gone up steadily. Completed fertility for women is below what we call below replacement. Total fertility rate, which I'm not going to bore you with too much, but the expected number of births a woman will have, replacement's 2.1. We're below replacement at 1.9. And higher order births, we've declined from being 59% of births, higher order meaning second, third, or fourth birth, being 59% in 1976 to 28% in 2006. So we've had this transformation of fertility, our childbearing patterns, which contributes to, again, the aging and the population as a whole. It's not a lot of difference in how many births among the different racial and ethnic groups. Latinos are at replacement, right at replacement. They're not having a lot of babies, just more young women. So it's all the proportional. They're not, whites are below replacement, blacks are below replacements, Asians are below replacements. It's just the age structure of the childbearing age. The proportion of your population of the childbearing age accounts for the difference. It's not, women are having, of certain racial or ethnic groups are having a whole lot of kids. 8,000 of us turn 65 every day, over 8,000. This is the boomers. That's a lot, and this is for the country as a whole. 5.6 a minute, so a bunch of us have joined me as a senior citizen status since I started talking. For the country as a whole, in 2010, just over 13% of the population in the country was 65 or older. The first boomer hit 65 in 2011. In those 8 years, the population is 65 and older in the United States has grown to 16%. Pennsylvania as a whole, 17.8%. The Southwest region, 19.6%. 1 in 5 of you are over 65 or older. Here's specific counties. In some counties, more than 1 in 5 are 65 or older. The other counties, others are close behind. Again, a lot of this has to do with the history, the economic history and the related demographic history with the end of steel and other industries and end of decline in coal and the young adults leaving people who either chose to stay or had no choice but to stay. And so there's challenges with a senior population this large, but there's also some opportunities we'll talk about. Here's the change by age group, 2010 to 2017. This is Pennsylvania as a whole. Under 25s declined by 5% in your state. Other groups have grown a little or declined, and you see the population 65 plus has grown by 16% in 7 years. This is the impact of the boomers. This is the impact of the boomers. I mean, you all knew this, but I'm just putting numbers on what you all knew is happening around you. Allegheny County, not quite as extreme, though the young population under 25 continues to decline. Your 25 to 44 is growing. This is where the in-migration of young adults being drawn to the new opportunities you've developed in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County is showing up demographically. This is why, even though there are more deaths than births, the core area of your region, the more urban area, as reason, it shows up in the demography that you're growing. There's optimism. There's reasons for optimism as shown up in the demography. And the population, because the young adults are growing, so the senior population isn't growing as fast, but it still grew by 10% in 7 years. I don't know how many of you realized how rapid, you all knew we have a senior population. I don't know how many knew how rapidly the senior population is growing and how that's transforming our economy, our social services, our politics. The region as a whole, the senior population grew by 12%. The other changes are similar to Allegheny. Westmoreland County, everybody declined except the senior population. Aging in place, people, you can't sell your home, you got to stay. I mean, or where you can sell your home for, you can't buy anything wherever you want to go. I've also been looking I do this expert witness work, and the disabled are protected under the Fair Housing Act, so I've looked some at disabilities, and so I thought it'd be interesting just to note, there's a lot of good data in the American Community Survey. There's also a good bit of research in disability-free life expectancy that's important, and the impact of obesity and other health risks that have to be taken into consideration. 37.7% of the American population, 65 and older, has at least one disability. They may have more than one. And this breaks it down by dressing, difficulty, hearing, vision, difficulty going out, physical difficulty, cognitive difficulty remembering. The absolute number of people with similar disabilities will grow as the boomers age, presenting more challenges for our health services and social services. There's been a trend that increase in life expectancy and the postponement of disability. We're getting older, but we're also we have in the past been living longer without facing a disability. Healthier population in general, better health care, health services. And for men, that's continued. For the first time, this is just one report, but it's concerning. Women have seen a smaller increase in life expectancy at older ages. By the way, women always live longer. You know that. Women are stronger. And smaller postponement of disability. This is an important change that, again, a cause for some concern. Two economists at Princeton, Ann Casey and Angus Deaton, identified decreases in life expectancy, in particular among 50-year-old men in their 50s, white men in their 50s. It's the first reversal for a significant population in the United States. They've been labeled deaths of despair, increases in suicide rates, drug use, deaths, worsening health conditions due to obesity. So this is quite concerning. Whether we can address this and reverse it is the first sign in well over a century of a reversal in this long-standing trend of increasing life expectancy. You're all aware of the issue of opioids. Just a couple of maps to drive it home of the drug overdose crisis. This was the pattern in 1999. This is drug overdoses in 2014. It's just stunning, it's heartbreaking and stunning. But this has societal impacts showing up in things like life expectancy. Is it over for men, Maybe not over, but here's the growth of the female workforce representation. This is only to 2010, but reaching 50%. Let me just go through this quickly, the plight of men. Today, 3 times as many men of working age do not work at all as compared to 1969. Selective male withdrawal from the labor force, rising non-employment largely to skills mismatch and disabilities and incarceration. Men aren't in the labor force to the same degree. Disability insurance is double between 1970 and 2009 for men of prime working age. Median income of American males declined almost $13,000 after accounting for inflation since 1969. The male college completion rates peaked in 1977 and have barely changed since then. This class of 2010, more women got associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. Essentially the same got professional degrees, more physicians. And this trend has continued. Women have moved into the labor force and continue to grow and make significant changes. This is 2014. This is North Carolina, gender composition of all these different types of colleges. And women, except for in our state, except for North Carolina State University and Ag Engineering School, are in the majority. Chapel Hill, they've been 60% of the undergraduates for 20 years. I'm going to talk, this is, I've got 10 minutes, so I've got to kind of move on here. One of the issues, this is where aging and racial ethnic diversity come together in the area of education. There's a number of high-risk areas of education. This map shows what we call the racial mismatch. In this population, the majority of school-age kids are non-white. The majority of voters are white. We have a hell of a time getting the white people to support public education in that circumstance. A very difficult time. This isn't the situation, because you're not as diverse, this isn't your situation. But the getting people to accept that human capital doesn't have a race or a color is a challenge for the leaders of our state, your state, my state, and other places. My state, even though North Carolina is growing rapidly, it's one of the leaders in growth. Half the counties declined since 2010, the rural counties, like parts of this region. We had a court case 12 years ago, 13 years ago, the Andrew case in North Carolina. Public education is funded by a combination of local tax money and state tax money. 17 counties sued, said we don't have an adequate tax base to meet our constitutionally mandated requirement for educating our kids. They wanted every level going up to Supreme Court, but there's still no remedy because the courts are very hesitant to tell the legislature how to spend money. But the situation remains, and the issue of race, ethnicity, and support for public education is going to be a big challenge. We also have some counties where the majority of both the voting age and school ages are people of color, and they generally have no tax base. Rural areas in the South and the West. There are opportunities. We're working with a couple of communities now to try to build more inclusive and equitable model of economic development. Inclusive development, what do we mean? We mean inclusive development ensures that all marginalized and excluded groups are stakeholders in the development process. Equitable development unlocks the full potential for local. You're going to get these slides, so I'm not, skip over. You're going to be able to look at this some more. By expanding opportunities for low-income people and communities of color. Through accountable public action and investment, it increases jobs, entrepreneurship, ownership, and wealth, making the larger communities more competitive. And a lot of the work I do, from the civil rights litigation work to this, I've been accused of being naive. I was a high school jock, I was an Eagle Scout, and we were told over and over, you're strong is your weakest link. And I actually believe that, and that's what a lot of this is about. Maybe it is naive, but I'll live with being naive. Inclusive growth. It's growth that both creates new economic opportunities and ensures access to opportunities for all segments of the society, particularly the poor, the working poor. Focuses on increasing per capita income through growth and greater access to non-income aspects of well-being. requires proactive policymaking by the state and contributors by other actors, private sector, not-for-profits. 5 key drivers are inclusive and equitable developments. It has to be an engine of opportunity. Develop a more inclusive, equitable entrepreneurial and business system. We've been pushing and have established equitable development venture funds. We have to build, as our communities, a collective ambition to execute on this strategy. And we have to measure this. We have to know how we're doing, a sustainability scorecard. We have to unlearn the old ways of thinking and doing, develop a more positive entrepreneurial aspect, mindset, and innovate, collaborate across all levels of government, and leverage inclusive and equitable policy toolkit. These are some of the policy toolkits. Again, you'll get a copy of this when this is over. We're doing this in Durham. We've also just been approached by Memphis to try to build this. I'm not going to go through this, but you can go through and see some of the strategy, the master plan. We've been working with Durham. One of the things we want to talk about is an inclusive supplier diversity program. Building the supply chain, building the minority supply chain, building an inclusive supply chain so you don't go to the same people all the time. We're working with the North Carolina Department of Transportation right there to make sure that they build a diverse and inclusive supply chain so that the same, and it literally is in North Carolina, good old boys don't get all the jobs. Here's our equitable sourcing model. Again, you're going to get a copy of this presentation. I hope you can take a look at it. I'm going to touch briefly on aging as an economic engine. We worry about it as a social problem, an economic problem, but there's great opportunities as well. It's a big segment. $15 trillion, that's a T. Global prize. There's some challenges for marketing to this population. And also in designing your stores. CVS has lowered all its shelves and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities, but also challenges. Seniors don't like to be singled out and reminded that they're old. Don't tell me I'm a senior now, please. And so companies that do well don't market them now as old folks' products. They're just, it's products. One of the big real challenges and opportunities for employment. A report came out, I saw it in the Washington Post within the last month. Maine, the oldest state in the country, is nursing homes shutting down. Why are they shutting down? 2 reasons. One, Medicaid reimbursement rates. As many of you know, Medicaid, a really large proportion of Medicaid goes to nursing homes. The other thing is they can't find people to work in them. And a lot of this is immigration driven. A lot of the workers in nursing homes have been immigrants. It's hard, low-paying work. So even though the demand in Maine for nursing care is going up, as it is in your region, they're having to shut down. They just cannot make money and cannot meet the challenges. One of the things we have to be careful to with all corporations, universities, is this transition. There's an amazing amount of human capital, of knowledge, institutional knowledge, that's held by the older people, by the seniors. How do we tap that, keep that knowledge and information productive as we move forward? How do we deal with the challenges, particularly of women who have to care for kids and their parents, aging parents? How do we build a flexible workforce model that allows women to meet their family responsibilities, growing family responsibilities? And, I know this is a non-political forum, but I think we have to advocate for I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but comprehensive immigration reform. I think it's absolutely necessary if you want to get your Social Security check. There's some urban design principles we have to take care of with this growing senior population. How well you can access and visit. There are things like senior playgrounds, fitness park, accessible transportation systems, complete street ordinances, your crosswalks. Uneven sidewalks are a lawsuit waiting to happen. Broken sidewalks, extended walk time for pedestrians, senior-friendly street signage. A lot of things we can do to change, we're going to have to do. There are also innovations in the marketplace, but I am pretty much out of time. So one group we have to focus on are older adults who are burdened by excessive housing costs, paying more than 30%. Many of these are renters, many are minority. For our target markets for the innovation in the future and right now, we have to remember rich and young at heart, poor and weak of limb. We have to realign our innovation priorities to meet this population. Just got the sign. Time for questions. I've thrown a lot at you.